Ka had never wanted anything for himself. Not once in 30 years of living. Not as a boy training in desert heat until his feet bled. Not as a young soldier who watched friends die in battles that belonged to other men's ambitions. Not as the Pharaoh's most decorated guard, standing outside every single night while the rest of the world slept. He had been trained to want nothing, to feel nothing, to be nothing except useful. Then Seti walked into the palace and ruined everything. Seti was not supposed to be beautiful. He was a physician's assistant, quiet, unremarkable on paper, assigned to treat minor ailments among the palace staff. He arrived on a Tuesday, carrying a worn leather satchel and wearing. Ka was at his post. He watched Seti cross the courtyard, watched everything professionally, without feeling. Except his eyes followed him longer than they should have. Seti glanced back just once. And in that single glance, somehow communicated that he found it more interesting than alarming. Ka looked away immediately. Tight of his shift. Their first real encounter happened a week later. By a training sword across his ribs. A stupid accident he refused to report. Because reporting it meant leaving his post. Himself in his quarters. To anyone. Anyway. Seti found out anyway. Physicians always did. But he appeared at his door after midnight with his leather satchel and an expression that left no room for argument. He examined the bruising with careful hands, rewrapped the injury with practiced efficiency, and said nothing for a long time. Quietly. You're very good at pretending you don't feel pain. Most soldiers are. Seti continued, It never actually helps. You packed your satchel and left. Ka sat in his quiet room and felt the ghost of Seti's careful hands on his ribs long after the door had closed. It grew the way real things grow, slowly, without announcement. Seti, are you all right?
Yes, Lord Ka. My arm feels better now.
Good. Rest well, young one. Their talks started as business, but soon they were just friends.
I know what you mean.
Right? Seti's laugh, which was soft and sudden and completely unguarded, forgotten for a moment to be the first time Ka touched him with intention, was in the corridor outside the physician's quarters, late at night. This is dangerous, Ka. You knew this would happen. I know, Ka. Ka's hand was still at Seti's face. Seti leaned into it slightly, just slightly, like a question. Ka answered by stepping closer. What followed was a love story that existed entirely in the spaces the palace didn't watch. Stolen hours in physicians' quarters, hands finding each other in the dark, to men who had both spent their entire lives being exactly what was required of them, finally, privately, completely being something else. Something real. Something that belonged only to them. Seti was tender in a way that disarmed Ka completely. He remembered small things, the way Ka took his food, the dreams he once mentioned and never repeated, the old scar on his left shoulder that Ka never explained and Seti never pushed. He loved carefully, like he understood that Ka was a man who had never been gently handled and needed time to believe it was real. Ka loved fiercely, quietly, the way soldiers do, showing it in presence rather than words. He stood between Seti and anything that could harm him. In the way he looked at, Seti wasn't watching. Who has found the one thing everything down to protect. 6 months in, everything collapsed. The Pharaoh's chief advisor had built his career on noticing what others missed. He noticed the route Ka's patrols had quietly shifted. He noticed the light under the physician's door at hours it shouldn't be lit. Brought his observations to the Pharaoh in the morning, with the satisfaction of a man delivering a verdict. Ka was summoned before the full court. No warning, no preparation. He walked in, Seti already standing there, pale, straight-backed, refusing to lower his eyes, despite the terror in every line of his body. Ka could see. And in that moment, looking at Seti alone and frightened of a court that had already decided everything,
Fear makes you deaf, but listen to me.
Felt something shift permanently inside him. Walked to stand beside Seti before anyone could speak. The court erupted. The advisor rose. The Pharaoh raised one hand and silenced everything. The silence that lasted a very long time. The Pharaoh was not a cruel man. He was a precise one. Ka, 30 years old, 15 years of loyal service, not a single failure on his record. The silence that lasted a very long time. The Pharaoh was not a cruel man. He was a precise one, and asked nothing. He made a decision that surprised in the room, including himself. Exile, not punishment, not execution. Exile with provision. Enough gold to leave, enough to survive, enough to build something beyond the borders of Egypt. Gone before sunrise, never returning. The advisor objected loudly. The Pharaoh looked, and he stopped. They left before the sun fully rose. 2 figures moving through the palace gate with a single bag between them and a leather satchel over his shoulder. The desert opened up before them, enormous and indifferent, and completely free of palace walls. Walking, Seti stopped. Ka turned. Seti was standing very still, with an expression Ka had never seen on him before. Something between terror and wonder, a kind of desperate hope. I need to tell you something, Ka. I should have told you weeks ago. I was afraid it would mean the end. You don't understand, do you? I can't do this. I'm afraid. The desert was very quiet. Ka crossed the distance between them in 3 steps and held—
I'm not afraid.
You shouldn't be. His face in both hands. And looked at him for a long time without speaking. Seti's eyes were wet, doing the thing it did, trying very hard not to fall apart.
How long have you known?
Tell me, how long has it been? Six weeks. You carried that alone for 6 weeks.
You must listen to me.
I'm sorry, I didn't know how to. He held Seti's face, his forehead pressed against his. Never alone. Do you understand me? Never again alone. I exhaled like he had been holding that breath for 6 weeks exactly. The crisis passed. The baby held. Labor began on a night in early spring when the air had finally cooled. And the village was quiet. It began slowly, and then with savage urgency, the way it always does, indifferent to readiness or fear. Seti, who was physician himself and therefore knew exactly what every symptom could mean, was frightened of the knowledge. Ka held him through those 2 weeks with a steadiness he did not entirely feel, because Seti needed him to be steady. And so he was. The crisis passed. The baby held. The village midwife worked quietly and efficiently. The oil lamp threw warm shadows across the walls. Then between one breath and the next, a sound cut through the room. Small, furious, completely alive. Seti collapsed back against the bed, making a sound that was not crying and not quite laughing, but somewhere in the broken space between the two.